Now, while Israel continues to dominate headlines, we turn to Yemen, where clashes have taken their deadliest turn yet. According to reports, forces loyal to Yemeni President Abdullah Saleh used guns, tanks, even rocket-propelled grenades in a violent standoff with the opposition tribesmen in the heart of the capital city. Now, the Gulf Cooperation Council has been trying to broker a peaceful transition deal from power for Saleh, but this weekend marked the third time that such a deal collapsed, all at the last minute. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said that she was outraged over the violence, urging the Yemeni president to stand down. Now, meanwhile, here in the United States, pivoting hard from that issue, a group of U.S. lawmakers reserved their outrage for the Secretary of State herself. 5 members of Congress have written to Clinton demanding an explanation of U.S. policy towards Americans who run hired gun operations. I'm talking, of course, about mercenary forces. All of this in light of Blackwater founder Erik Prince's latest exploits in the United Arab Emirates. There's a lot to talk about here, and for more, I'm joined by Jeremy Scahill. He's a national security correspondent for The Nation magazine. He's also the author of this book here, Blackwater, The Rise of the World's Most Powerful Mercenary Army. Jeremy, it's great to have you back on the program. Thank you so much for being with us. Now, before we get to the real news with Yemen and Blackwater, quick reaction to Netanyahu's speech today. I mistakenly thought I was watching a 2012 nomination party before I realized it was just his address to Congress.
Right. I mean, he had at least 30 or 40 standing ovations, depending on who you ask. A far warmer reception than President Obama has received, certainly from the Republicans, but you could argue also from the Democrats. It seems as we enter the political season here in the United States that Bibi could potentially get the nomination for either the Democratic or Republican Party. I mean, it's incredible the amount of enthusiasm that is thrown on Benjamin Netanyahu, particularly in light of the fact that he made the outrageous statement that basically the only free Arabs are those that are living in Israel.
Yeah.
And actually went so far as to say that Israel is not like the Belgians in the Congo, not like the British in India, to which I replied, no, you're like the Israelis in Palestine doing exactly what the world sees you do and which is condemned regularly by many nations around the world, except the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I love this. We go from, a week where Obama is touting his the U.S. role in helping democracy building in the Arab Spring to Bibi essentially getting this groveling reception here on Capitol Hill. But pivoting to Blackwater, we on this program last week talked at length about the sort of legal issues associated with Erik Prince's new ventures, as you've written yourself, his new company. What was it? Reflexive Reactions?
Yeah, or R2.
R2, right. Hopefully it's not going to be the same kind of reflexive reaction that they had in the unfortunate tragedy and the slaughter of Iraqi civilians in Nisour Square. You've written recently that lawmakers are now taking up this issue. They've written a letter to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. What indication, if any, do you have that Congress may be able to do something about this and that the State Department even is paying attention to the issue?
Right. I mean, first of all, the number of lawmakers in the U.S. that have made this even remotely an issue, you can pretty much count on one hand or on both hands. And the fact is that it really is left up to people like Representative Jan Schakowsky of Illinois, who's on the Intelligence Committee, and John Conyers, who, of course, is a stalwart of many progressive causes in the Congress, to even raise this issue. And what the lawmakers said in their letter was basically a request for Hillary Clinton to explain whether or not Erik Prince got the necessary licenses from the U.S. State Department to provide these kinds of services to a foreign government. Technically, when someone like Erik Prince or a company like Blackwater or whatever he wants to call it these days wants to export the kinds of training services or armed services that Erik Prince is exporting to the United Arab Emirates, and remember, Erik Prince is a Navy SEAL who's had access to very sensitive secret U.S. operations, was allowed to go into CIA headquarters under President Bush and look at operational intelligence and then offer his services there. Whether or not he got a license for that is up for debate right now, and we'll see how Hillary Clinton responds. But Blackwater has been fined in the past for not obtaining those licenses, so we'll have to see what happens. But I don't have any illusions about anyone in the Congress making this a central issue. I mean, basically people don't care because it has no positive impact on their ability to raise campaign cash. No one is pouring money into the coffers of anti-war congresspeople or people that stand up to the war industry. And
knowing what you know about Erik Prince and about the State Department, I mean, do you have any sense that could this really have happened without anyone's knowledge whatsoever? I mean, I have somewhat a hard time believing that.
Well, I mean, we have an indication from the reporting, the comments in the New York Times from an unnamed administration official that the Obama administration was, in fact, aware that Erik Prince was offering these types of services in the United Arab Emirates. You know, Lucy, I obtained a speech that Erik Prince gave in late 2009 in front of a military audience in his home state of Michigan, in which Erik Prince laid out this vision for the United States to send small teams of mercenaries into countries in the neighborhood of Iran with the express intent of countering what Erik Prince called Iran's creeping influence and whipping up Shia revolts in the Middle East. So Erik Prince seems to be making good on that. Whether or not it was sanctioned by the Obama administration would really require probing from people in Congress, and not just the 5 people that wrote this letter. It would require committees with subpoena power going after them. And that didn't happen even when the Democrats were in control. So I think it's going to be left to the usual suspects who do make this an issue regularly.
Well, that's great. So if the neocons don't get to bomb Iran, then I guess our individual citizens will get to stir up unrest there. A wonderful development there. Moving on to Yemen, I know it's a totally completely different topic, but it really does look like the situation is reaching a critical mass there. I know you've reported on this issue extensively, and I just want to know what you make of the U.S. response so far. I mean, we saw Hillary Clinton expressing deep disappointment in Saleh as if it was some sort of a child and not a dictator or essentially a client of the United States that they've supported for years. Do you think they're actually serious about backing up their calls for him to go?
No, I mean, even as you and I are speaking right now about Hillary Clinton's reaction or the White House's reaction, the fact is that there are scores of U.S. Special Operations Forces that are inside Yemen right now training Ali Abdullah Saleh's counterterrorism units. The fact is that for more than a decade now, the U.S. approach to Yemen has been almost exclusively through the lens of who the Yemenis allow us to kill inside of their country. Just a few days after the raid on Osama bin Laden's compound in Pakistan, the U.S. attempted to kill an American citizen named Anwar al-Awlaki, who's been in Yemen for some time. He's an American-born cleric who is now living in Yemen. His family is from Yemen. And so what we're seeing now with the chaos that is spreading throughout Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, is in part a failed U.S. policy that was obsessively monofocused on counterterrorism and did almost nothing to alleviate the suffering of the Yemeni people, instead pouring in millions upon millions of dollars and sensitive training to brutal and murderous forces controlled by Yemen's president. So, you know, Ali Abdullah Saleh is famous for a number of things in Yemen, not the least of which is his ability to get around to resigning once he's done not resigning. So, you know, the U.S. response is almost laughable if it wasn't so deadly right now.
And what's your sense of whether the focus is only going to intensify on counterterrorism efforts in Yemen in light of the fact that bin Laden was killed, and now they're sort of casting a wider net and fighting al-Qaeda wherever I guess the battle needs to be taken to?
Well, you know, I would be very careful in pretending that I knew the answer to that. What I will say is that if there is chaos and instability that spreads across Yemen, and if the threat of the country dividing becomes real, the U.S. could respond by withdrawing and pulling out and seeing where the flames burn, or it could respond by saying, here's our opportunity to jump in the chaos and bump off a bunch of people that we want to hit. So, you know, I think that the U.S. could go, you know, any number of directions. But certainly a lot has been made about this group, al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, that operates in Yemen, that is, by most estimates, 300 to 500 people strong. And there's a lot of agitating on Capitol Hill for the U.S. to go after these individuals in a more aggressive way. Ali Abdullah Saleh staying in power means they can continue to hit these guys. Ali Abdullah Saleh leaving power could open the door even wider for the U.S. to go in. And it's very, very dangerous, I think, for the U.S. to consider boots on the ground in a more extensive way than they already exist.
Well, dangerous and, of course, absurdly expensive, and Lord knows if we have the budget to sustain that. Jeremy, thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy. Look forward to having you again in the program soon. That was Jeremy Scahill, author of Blackwater.